Molo Sanbonani, hello, how's it? Shalom, Renont, welcome, Nadi. Welcome to the Big Daddy Liberty show, specifically late nights with Big Daddy Liberty. That's right, late nights with Big Daddy Liberty. Man, oh man, I have missed you guys. It's been a long week, a very interesting week, a jam-packed news week. And remember, on this show, we look at that week, right? I always hope I'm the last authority that you'll listen to on a Sunday night after you have packed away all your favorite other YouTubers and your favorite shows on television. I see Idols is now back on mainstream TV. For those of you who are fans of that, I'm sure you're excited. Welcome to it, guys. It is Late Nights with Big Daddy Liberty. I am your favorite fat boy, Big Daddy Liberty, your street fighter for classically liberal ideas. As I am now officially, as a reminder to you, I'm now officially on the ground war. I'm now out and about in communities, actually injecting my liberty ideas in communities, building these cells, if you will, of liberty-minded individuals, whether they are in rural parts of the country, are in formal settlements, townships, or even suburbia. Individuals who, once they can coalesce or gather, if you will, around the ideas, can actually then begin to push back against the bad ideas that infect our politics and infect and degrade, if you will, our society. So I'm now officially on that mission. Yeah, guys, as usual, YouTube is still quite glitchy, so just for my peace of mind, let me just keep an eye on the comments and check that you guys can hear the show and you can see me quite clearly. Welcome to it, guys. I am keeping an eye on those comment sections. Gentle Inflatables, welcome to the show. Deflatus, hello, hello. And Kantango, Matt, hi. Heinz Rubel, welcome, dude. And Amanda Lee, Gershon Cox, Elise van Niekerk, I see you guys as everybody is streaming into this conversation. As always, Late Nights with Big Daddy Liberty is not a long show. I'm trying to really become more disciplined in the time allocations of my show. So we will be done in an hour. So at the top of the hour at 10 p.m., this show will wrap up. I do have a guest for us tonight, a very interesting chap, someone who especially when it comes to issues of foreign policy, I really consider him quite a bit of a guru in that regard, but generally a writer and an analyst from the Institute of Race Relations. I'm talking, of course, about Terence Corrigan. I'm going to have him on in about 10 minutes or so as we have a 40-minute conversation around the news week that was. What got you guys talking? What had you guys gnashing your teeth over? What had you pissed off, man? Let's have that conversation as we look at the news week that was. Guys, remember, this show, the Big Daddy Liberty show, comes to you basically 3 times a week. Every Wednesday at 7 p.m., you have the Big Daddy Liberty show that comes to you every Wednesday at 7 p.m., This week I had a very, very interesting guest, if you remember, in the form of Gideon Hubert, better known as Paratus, and you can find him on Twitter at Paratus2014, and Jonathan Wright, of course, where we discussed all issues around self-defense, amending gun laws, and really in relation to the crime stats. So if you want to check that out, it's on the YouTube channel. Just go to videos. Remember, all my videos on YouTube are listed in playlists. So you don't have to scroll through everything. You can actually find the playlist for both the vlogs, the Big Daddy Liberty show, Blacks Only, which will come back, and of course, Late Nights with BDL. Alrighty. I did say 3 shows a week. Then there's the podcast on a Friday. That's the audio only show. Remember, the podcast is actually quite important. For those of you who remember the clip I did, basically detailing my plans as Big Daddy Liberty of how do I get these liberty-minded ideas into communities across the country. I argue that there's 2 layers. There's 2 layers to the BDL plan. The one, of course, is the air wall, my ability to broadcast my ideas over social media, and of course, elements of traditional media. In particular, my podcast, I'm looking to have it syndicated on community radio stations across this country. So the podcast that you hear, that you can access on Spotify, Apple, and all your favorite podcasting channels will also ever increasingly be syndicated on actual community radio stations across the country. So that is part of the ground war that I'm doing. It's actually traveling across this country, having meetings with local community radio stations and saying, hey, here's some new content, here's something different, put me on your channel. So I am in the Western Cape, I am in Cape Town for about another month and a half. And I'll be resuming basically those meetings with local radio stations in this part of the world to have the podcast edition of the show syndicated on their radio station. So you can look forward to that. And yeah, guys, it's going to be hopefully a very powerful means in which we can spread these liberty ideas. As I fight for these values, as I always say, of faith, flag, family, and freedom, there is no other way in which we can build a property-owning, prosperous, non-racial, and free society if we do not rally South Africans around ideas and not personalities. And I often hear people say this, they'll say, why don't you stand for politics? Or, what do you think about so-and-so and so-and-so? And I say, guys, it's all kind of irrelevant in the grand scheme of things if we do not win the battle of ideas. If we do not win, I'm going to repeat that, the battle of ideas. The battle of ideas, of course, being the idea that it is he who injects the greatest volume of ideas into a society that is at the point of crisis like ours who will win the day. Woo-hoo! Let me hit you again with that one. Let me rewind it. And I'm going to repeat that one again. And I'll say the battle of ideas, which is the basis of how I operate, is exactly this. The idea that it is he who injects the greatest volume of ideas into a society that is at the point of crisis who will win that society, who will sway that society. So that is exactly my mission. That is what I mean when I talk about the air war and the ground war. And that's what Big Daddy Liberty is busy with. And those of you who are the Patreon subscribers who are donating on PayPal, you are literally funding the mission of Big Daddy Liberty. You are firmly on the Liberty bus. You're funding my work. It is you who I'm totally dependent on. And I say thank you to every single one of you. And I'm going to shout you out today, guys. I often say I'll do this and I forget because I get caught up in the show. And I really want to shout you guys out tonight. I'm going to start with my new Patreon fam. Thank you so much to every single one of you. It is a bit of a long list. Bear with me, guys. But in August, I've seen Ole Celebi, who's donating $10 per month. Thank you so much, Ole. Ngiyabonga kakhulu, ngiyaleboga hahulu. I'll see for your support. Again, thank you for getting on the Liberty bus. That's Ole Celebi with your $10 a month. Thank you so much, Ma. And then there's the $5 from R. Rose. Thank you so much for your support. Okay, some people have deleted their pledges. That's fine, guys. I totally understand it. Please don't think there's any shame in, if you delete a pledge or you amend a pledge. I understand the economy is incredibly tough at the moment. So you'll never get any complaints from me. I just hope that you guys will come back and, donate or be a part of the show, even if it means dropping your pledge every month. Remember, guys, you don't have to go overboard. A simple $1 a month, that's 17 Rand a month, is more than enough. I have Rose Nixon Cortez on here. Thank you so much for your $5. I see you. And of course, I've got Nora Pepper with $10 a month. Thank you so much, Nora. I see you. There's a few repeats here. Let me see if this can refresh. And of course, Shelley Road. Hi, welcome, and thank you so much for your $10 a month. Now, let's see if there's anybody I've missed. I know there's quite a few people who joined in the latter bits of July, but I missed basically shouting you out. I see Andrew Esmonde Esmond White on here. Thanks a lot for the dollar. I appreciate that. I see you, Mro for... Yo, that's a long name, and it is, I think it's an anagram. I'm not sure what it is, but it's Mrofnok Todd, Nod. I hope I said that correctly, but thank you so much for the $5. I appreciate the love. And I see Sebastian Murray Roberts. Thank you for the $10. I really appreciate it. And I hope I am making my way down the list here properly. There's just a few more, guys. Bear with me. I see you, Mia N34 3420 with your $5 a month. Dion M, thank you so much for your $5. Wessel Pretorius, baie dankie vir die ondersteuning. En Rosalind Gerba, baie dankie vir die $1 wat jy het gepledge op Patreon. En dankie Audrey, Volgalaris of Volgarelis. Baie dankie vir die $1 wat jy het gepledge op Patreon. Reg, baie dankie, thank you very much everybody for the support, and a big shout out to every single one of you who are parting with your hard-earned cash to support my mission. I do not take any of you for granted, and I'm super, super grateful. I think I've missed a few. Oh, guys, don't crucify me. I see Eric Mudley, thank you very much for the support. JP, thanks a million for the $10, brother. I see you. Arno Slabbert, thank you very much for the $5. And Andrea Menkis, thank you for the support. Oh wow, there actually are quite a few I've missed. Cheryl Barnard, thank you very much for the $1. Mary Lou Marais, thank you for the $1. And Omni Activist, thank you for amending the pledge and staying on. Thank you so much. And David, thank you very much for the $1. Guys, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I do want to be studious in my doing this, and I'm going to shout those who are on PayPal. It's just a few of you. I think there's only about 3. But I must say thank you to every single one of you who are on here. Remember, I've opened up the avenues in which you can contribute to the show, both on Patreon, that link is in the descriptor, and on PayPal. Just, use one of my email addresses on there. That's bigdaddylibertyza@gmail.com, and you can send a donation via me that way. Heinz Strobel. Hein, hey, yeah. I see you with the support on Patreon. Jakubus Malan Baranki and TJ Vision, thank you so much, guys, for the support. And that's everybody, I think, so far. And I had to shout you guys out because, again, you are the very lifeblood of what I do and my ground war. Without you guys, really, it would become an incredibly high mountain to try and surmount alone. So thank you so much to every single one of you. And hey, if you've just joined the show, welcome to the Big Daddy Liberty Show, Late Nights with Big Daddy Liberty. I am your favorite fat boy, BDL. Welcome to it, welcome to it. And if you've just joined, I was just giving a shout out to everybody, all single one of you who have been supporting Big DL on this mission that I'm on. Wow, speaking about support, and this is an incredible amount. Offensing, Gabonga Kulu, thank you so much for the $99. Wow. Oh, wow, that is incredibly humbling. Wow. With the message being, keep up the good fight until we win the battle of ideas, BDL. Wow, offensive. Ooh, I'm actually getting a little flustered. Thank you so much for that support. I really appreciate it. It is you guys who are literally, wow, I actually feel the lump on my throat developing here. Yeah, guys, it is you guys who are literally, it is you guys who are literally the backbone of what I do. It is you guys, the words of encouragement, you guys who watch the show, share it, who donate to the show, who are literally the lifeblood of what I do, who literally get me into communities. So please understand that I do not take your support lightly, and I do not take what you guys do. And just even if it's a kind word, I do not take it lightly. Thank you so much, guys, and welcome to the show, Late Nights with BDL. I'm at the 15-minute mark. I'm going to bring in my guest in a minute or so. I did tell him we'll be on once I'd done my due diligence at the very beginning. If you're joining the show, welcome to Late Nights with Late Nights with BDL. I'm Big DL. Welcome to it. And guys, do me a favor, hit that like button, share this link. If your friends are awake at this time, let them join us rather for this conversation as we look at the news week that was. What got you talking? What got you, maybe mad or angry, or mad and angry is the same thing. What got you smiling? And what got you gnashing your teeth? Let's have that conversation as we look at the news week that was. We provide some analysis, some insight on both local issues and a few international issues. When I have someone like Terence Corrigan on the show, I cannot miss the opportunity of raising international issues and getting his insight from him on that. So we're going to talk about a lot of issues here. The various corruption scandals in this country, what we can do about them to fight back. We're going to look at Women's Month, but specifically with hard issues and not the fluffy stuff that we often hear, which specifically I want to tackle the issue of how do we protect women, and more specifically, how do we have women become their greatest protectors? How do we empower women for them to be able to stand their own ground and say, actually, I will and I'm able and I'm empowered to defend my life, my liberty, and my property rights? So we're going to have that conversation. And of course, we're going to look at Zimbabwe, guys. I don't know if you've been paying attention, but our neighbors to the north, aside from the usual tough time they've been going through, things there are really, really bad. Their version of a new dawn, which came about basically through a military coup and the installment of Emerson Mnangagwa in that part of the world, hasn't been much of a new dawn at all. It's been actually turned out to be a bit of a fraught reboot, if you will. So we're going to have a conversation with my guest tonight as we look at what's happening in that part of the world too. We provide some analysis and some insight. Guys, welcome to it. I see the stream is getting much more busier. Some familiar faces on here. Molemo Musau, Khotson Tate, welcome to the show. Please check your emails. About my emails, I have been able to now have an admin assistant, someone who's able to go through my emails and keep me updated and respond timelessly. So make sure that if you want to get in touch with the show, you want to get in touch with me, email me, guys. And my official email address is bdl@bigdaddylibertyshow.com. Let me repeat that. It's bdl@bigdaddylibertyshow.com. And my assistant Umbali will get in touch with you guys and keep me updated with all of that. Alrighty, guys, let me get straight into it. Our conversation for tonight, as I said, will feature Terence Corrigan, who's the project manager at the Institute of Race Relations, but also a writer and an analyst. So give me a moment as I go to a very quick break. And after this, we have that conversation with Terence Corrigan. All right, guys. Sorry for that little break. I just had to establish my guest on our Skype line. Remember, I am in conversation with the project manager at the Institute of Race Relations, but really a writer and analyst, and someone who I look to, as I mentioned, on all things foreign policy. In fact, there is a podcast, if you search on the Iono website, that I did with Terence quite a while back. Again, underscoring the fact that he is my go-to on all things foreign policy, especially when I want to have those chats and deeper insights on these issues, among others, of course. A ardent liberal and someone who I think deserves a much bigger platform. Terence Corrigan. Terence, welcome to the Big Daddy Liberty Show. Let me just put you on screen. Oh dear, there's a slight glitch. Give me a moment, Terence. You are now on screen. There we go. Terence, hi. Welcome to the BDL show. Oh, rather,
great pleasure to be here.
Sorry about that, Terence. But yeah, so Terence, Late Nights with Big Daddy Liberty. Last weekend, I had John Endres, the newly appointed chief of staff there at the IRR, and we had like a relaxed chat, basically, a Sunday evening chewing of the fat, if you will. As we look at the news week that was. And Terence, I think you're someone who I really wanted to have on the show this weekend because, again, there's been two major issues on an international front, which I want you to opine on, but we'll get to those. Let's start on local issues. Terence, It's been a fascinating news week, hasn't it? Excuse me, as we're now seeing a panicked ANC try its level best to do rushed PR on the growing stink of corruption cases that have involved primarily COVID funding and the windfall for a lot of tenderpreneurs over PPE funding. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, look, I mean, this is a problem in its own right, but it's also the culmination of two decades of a sort of escalating malaise. I think that South Africa made the critical wrong turn in 1997 when the ANC made a conscious decision through its cadre deployment policy to politicize the state. Now, I hear the arguments about the inherited problems and whatever, and that's absolutely true and absolutely accepted. But the point is that what we needed was a strong meritocratic, career-oriented civil service. When you are, when it is the declared intention of your party to put political operatives in there, you will destroy that. They were warned of that at the time, but unfortunately, as often happens in this country, there were a chorus of voices in the media and academia and whatever who made all sorts of excuses for this. I remember one guy saying, this is all we're doing is adopting a more American approach as opposed to the previous sort of British Commonwealth approach. Complete nonsense. So we've had an escalating corruption problem, but I think that unfortunately South Africans have also tended to see that primarily through a moral lens. This is a moral problem, and of course it is. But the scale of resources that have been literally plundered, and the way that this has been used to feed patronage networks, makes it almost, it's worked its way into the DNA of governance. There was a science fiction program I watched some years ago where this guy had cancer, but the cancer had sort of become his body. And I think this is, corruption has become a governance strategy. And South Africa is not the only country where this has happened, but the stakes are extraordinarily high because you will not be able to maintain a sort of middle income, sophisticated economy if we carry on like this. And I think that doing it under these circumstances shows the depth of depravity and callousness and, I don't know, just disregard for reality that has come to define so much of our politics.
Absolutely, Terence. I'm smiling on the inside because you've raised something which I think is not spoken about in the mainstream media and even on fellow YouTubers, which is the political underpinnings for the rampant corruption, the poor governance. And you raised it quite aptly by saying it's the policy of cadre deployment, which is a major reason for it. Just a quick definition for the viewers, and you did offer one early on, but it's this idea that those who assume state power, the politicians who assume state power, then begin to load the levels and echelons of government with their cronies, with their cadres, with their friends, basically. Thus creating a system where it's those with political clout and not necessarily the requisite skills, perhaps even in a given position, who get first preference for state jobs and the like. And of course, we've seen how that spills over into the corruption mess. Where there's, and I want you to opine on this, just as a quick point. You almost have two layers of a patronage network by the ANC. The one is, I'm a friend of so-and-so politician. I belong to a branch. I'm his chairperson. Therefore, if I make it into a position of councillor, mayor, you name it, I will then appoint my cronies who supported me on a fractional level into positions of the state that then prop me up and even insulate me in that position. That's the one layer of it. It's the actual state jobs. And the other, of course, is it almost feeds onto from the first, which is once you then also have your friends and your particular faction, if you will, in that position of power, usually in procurement positions also, you're then also able to release funding from the state by way of corrupt tenders and corrupt deals, which then also fund these, in inverted commas, business people, these tenderpreneurs, who then, as a feedback loop, fund me in my next bid to be re-elected in my electoral position. It's almost like a feedback circle, a closed loop, if you will, of crookedness. Terence?
Yeah, no, look, just on one of those points, the term tenderpreneur has been around since the early 2000s. That gives you a sense of the longevity. How this phenomenon. It's not like it hasn't been identified, but it's been allowed to fester. Now there are sort of different levels, and our state is not monolithic. You have pockets of professionalism. You have some very good people. Unfortunately, as you tend to go, let's say, down the ladder to local government, you see that dysfunctionality really, really raising its head, because the pool of people from which we can draw is small. There's all sorts of reasons for that, but under the best of circumstances, we'd have a problem. And unfortunately, that is the area of or the part of government that interacts most with people on that sort of quality of life issues. Those of us who live in major metropolitan areas, we're still more or less okay. But you can go to hundreds of these little small towns, villages, and see absolute desolation. Things like water supply is not working. This is South Africa's dirty secret, that for a long time money was not our problem. Towards the end of the Mbeki presidency, some provincial departments, like health and whatever, were actually giving money back to the treasury because they hadn't been able to spend it. With the all of the aboves of corruption. Now we find ourselves in a position where we are denuded of so much of that state capacity. Where this has become a trough, and we are now in a fiscal crisis. The situation just doesn't work. I'd like to add one other thing. You mentioned my sort of foreign affairs background.
Yep.
South Africa is not the only country in the world with a corruption problem. I lived in East Asia for a while, and very successful societies, South Korea, Taiwan, they have their fair share of scandals. But what's a point to appreciate is, while this isn't an excuse, what you have there is a sense that I will do my job and I will take my commission. Unfortunately, what many societies in Africa, and I think in many respects South Africa, has fallen into is, we'll take our commission and screw the job. And this one of the things that makes me pull my hair out is when I hear someone in the ANC talking about the developmental state. I have lived in countries which are governed by developmental states. South Africa is not one. And sort of everything that these countries have done to make their states developmentally oriented, South Africa seems determined not to do.
Absolutely. Guys, welcome to it. This is Late Nights with Big Daddy Liberty. If you are joining us here at the half-hour mark, I am in conversation with Terence Corrigan. He is the project manager and really a writer and analyst at the Institute of Race Relations, someone who you really need to pay attention to if you are a fan of the Daily Friend website. That's www.dailyfriend.co.za. You'll find all of Terence's writings on there. I really encourage you to go on there. And while I'm here and at it, let me say thank you very much to Robin Dandelion, I love your name, for the 13 Rand Super Chat. Thank you so much for that, guys. I am keeping an eye on the comments. Please send your questions through and I'll forward them on to Terence. Terence, as I shape this conversation, and we'll get to international issues now, because there's two two major issues that I really want us to talk about on the international front, and that's the situation in Beirut, which is now quickly descending once again into absolute chaos after the explosion that happened there. We'll get to that. And of course, Zimbabwe. So that's a little later in the show. Guys, stay tuned. But two more issues that I want us to cover on a local front. Again, sticking with the corruption one for a moment. And I love how you've aptly described the political background behind it and why we're seeing the sort of levels of corruption that happen. You know, I want to talk to me about the almost panic by the ANC in trying to sort of regain ground, especially with the sort of more middle class voter. You know, the idea that they seem to be doing something about this is the image they want to portray. I'll give you a few examples here, and one which really amused me. Oh my, I can't even hold back the guffaw of laughter that was coming here. You know, the one that I found really amusing and really apt, if you will, is Brand SA. This is you know, you've probably seen their nice adverts and that big little logo they do, buy South African, they'll say, or go to South Africa, blah, blah, blah. Brand SA basically has collapsed. Its former CEO, this is Kingsley Makubela, excuse me, in a rather damning 53-page document, you know, details levels of power abuse, corruption, and maladministration in the state-owned enterprise, which ironically is tasked with the image of South Africa. Isn't that just ironic? Perhaps isn't the corruption and all that stuff the very image of South Africa?
You know, I think this is people often ask me, you know, how do I keep up my sense of humor? And I say you can laugh or you can cry. I find laughter is an effective personal anecdote, at least, you know, while we're here. But yes, no, I mean, this is sort of you know, foxes guarding the hen house, or you know, lunatics running the asylum type of territory. It's Karl Marx says something about history being first played out as tragedy, then as farce, and we've managed to combine them. You know, yeah, as you say, Brand SA, for heaven's sake, you know, like at least keep up the veneer.
You know, and again, it really cracked me up. But maybe to segue to a more serious level, you know, and there's a myth I want us to burst here very quickly, maybe as a final point as we wrap this segment up. You know, the myth that endures, that continues, and I see this play out a lot in my social medias. Well, you know, they'll say there's two ANCs. You know, we just need to support the good ANC, because the good ANC has people like Tito Mboweni and, you know, Cyril Ramaphosa. They'll save us, they'll say, Terence. They'll save us. They just need to fight. We need to give them a bigger mandate. The likes of Bruce, what's his name? Said this, Peter Bruce. They'll save us, and we just need to have faith in them. Your thoughts on this theory?
Okay. Yeah, I've been hearing this one for a long time too. I remembered when was it the 2008 election, the one that gave us Jacob Zuma. 2009. There was a commentator on the old Thought Leader platform, which is sort of you know, the party seems to be more or less over there. And he wrote an article saying South Africa first, but I'm voting ANC. And if I remember the article correctly, it was, yeah, you know, I understand, you know, Zuma's a liability and this, and the next thing, but, you know, I'm voting for Mandela's ANC. And I think I put a comment at the bottom there saying something to the effect of, unfortunately, there's only one ANC on the ballot, and this is what you are voting for. You know, yes, it would be nice if we could if we could have Albert Latouni back, but he's not standing for office. You know, one needs at some point to concede to reality. I would really hate to have Tito Mbowene's job. I think that he understands the gravity of the situation. I think that if it was up to him, we would be doing something about it. But I've also seen there's virtually no evidence that the president has actually backed him. He seems to be an isolated voice crying in the wilderness, and yeah, what's that saying about a prophet is never appreciated in his own time? Unfortunately, we appreciate prophets in retrospect.
Sadly so.
Yeah.
Speaking about looking at issues in retrospect, I've had a full opportunity now to look back on you know, I'm sure you noticed that, Terence, about a week ago, I was part of the protest. Not a part
Right,
of it,
yeah.
I was just actually meant to do a show there, and I was happened to
Mm,
be roped in by the organizers to come speak. But anyway,
right.
the issue of farm murders itself is actually quite a serious one. And
Mm,
it does seem as though, you know, we have a government in this country and a political elite that almost speak with a forked tongue when it comes to this issue. You know, on the one hand, when there's loud protests, they'll say things like, "Oh
mm,
no," they'll say, "You know, we actually take this seriously," as a one Beirut said when he was announcing crime stats,
mm.
that even though these murders have risen, we're taking it seriously. As to whether he then detailed a workable plan, not at all. And then on the other hand, you've had comments like those of David Mabuza. Do you want to maybe just quickly chime in on this, just for a minute or two?
Yeah, look, you know, this is a this is a deeply serious issue. Now, I must say I do find it entertaining that people who decry people saying all lives matter as opposed to Black Lives Matter will turn around and sort of apply exactly the same logic when you talk about farmers or rural communities. You know what I've been dealing with this for a long time, and it's a hot button issue, and I think there are crazies on all sides. But you know, here's the interesting thing. I think that we need to take the analysis of it out of the raw numbers of people murdered, and talk about this as a holistic rural crime problem. And therein, I think you will see where the real problem comes in. We can get bogged down in arguing about the number of murders and so, well, you know, like so many more people are killed in the Cape Flats and whatever. But you know, I think that rural communities, and this extends to farm-based communities, but also sort of people living in traditional or customary communities, they are underserviced in the sense that the resources to effectively police those areas are just not there. You talk about the professionalism, but also, you know, if you look at a crime like cattle rustling, um, you know, you have people who, or syndicates that engage in, you know, what are essentially, you know, large scale raids, able to transfer, you transport like, you know, 30, 50, 100 head of cattle, you know, off a farm, you know, hundreds of kilometers away across the Lesotho border or wherever, and some of it comes the other way. You know, to deal with that, you need intelligence, a proper crime intelligence, which I think is also an issue with with the farm murder phenomenon. And you need things like helicopters, quad bikes, you know, and the systems to use them. Now, you know, here's something that I've gleaned from speaking to farmers over the lockdown. They say that even those who have not been, you know, the victims of any sort of violence or threat of violence, there's this gnawing sense that it could happen to you, because they say that that stock theft, vandalism, crop theft, which is, you know, a crime that those of us, you know, get our food from Woolworths just don't comprehend. You know, there's always that sort of undercurrent that can turn violent. And where is your help going to come from? It takes, you know, 2 minutes for a situation to escalate and, you know, you to be killed. But the protective mechanisms just aren't there. You know, so you know, to me, it almost doesn't matter whether whether the police minister or the deputy president, you know, is deeply committed or deeply empathetic or whatever. You know, the point is like what is being done, and you know, those murder figures, as serious as they are, don't explain the whole picture. And until we're dealing with that whole complex, you know, this is not going to improve.
Yeah, look, I have a slight disagreement with you on this issue of, you know, why people maybe segment this issue and put it as a standalone, which, you know, as you said, is how they frame it at times.
Yeah,
They make
sure.
it sound as though they're almost pulling a Black Lives Matter special
Right, right.
pleading. But in reality, no. In this instance, I argue that they can actually back it up. And you rightly said it, in fact,
Mm.
which is, South Africa having a broad crime problem.
Yeah, yeah.
It's accentuated when you look at those folks who live in rural parts of the country with
No,
all
no,
the
no, no,
issues you
no,
raised.
absolutely. Look, I'm not suggesting that this is not a distinct and serious problem.
Yeah.
And certainly, I sitting in my suburban home in Johannesburg do not have that same problem that someone farming in the sort of rural northwest is going to have. So no, I mean, I think that there is there's a definite and distinct problem. In fact, I believe statistically you can show that farming communities are disproportionately the victims of the sort of
Absolutely.
violent robbery crime,
And I think the point you made
that I've written about.
Sorry, Terence, I was just saying, the point you made is actually quite a good one insofar as saying, the one thing I do personally on my side, I do make a distinction on, and I get into a lot of trouble with the sort of the likes of people who advocate for this, is I remove the racial arguments often made, because that's where they become similar to the Black Lives Matter types. There's some people who basically say, "Oh no, this is happening because we are white farmers." And I say, that's actually that's absolutely nonsense. I come from or half of my family at least comes from a rural farming background, and I can tell you now, the sort of crimes that quote white farmers face are the sort of crimes that we face. And I've always been a big proponent of farming communities, regardless of your race, arm up. Get organized and arm up. There will be no messiah from the state who comes and saves us, or who suddenly takes the issue seriously. Because as you rightly said, Terence, it's beyond just the issue of our personal safety. It's the idea of the attack on our life, liberty, and our property rights in rural parts of this country. Stock theft being a major one. Terence, I'm running out of time, so I'm going to move our conversation a little bit, if you don't mind, to these two areas that I really wanted your views on. I'll begin with the farthest, and we'll bring it closer to home. This massive explosion, Terence. Viral footage of it on social media.
Yep.
It almost looked like a hydrogen bomb or like an atom bomb in the middle of Beirut in Lebanon. Now, of course, and I want to set you up here quite nicely, because me and my stance, it'll be a little biased on this issue. My immediate thought went to Hezbollah. Immediately, in terms of my suspicions, because you cannot have a society like that, which has been in turmoil for a very long time already, with people taking to the streets, opposing this terrorist organization that in inverted commas governs Lebanon. You cannot maybe not see a hand of Hezbollah in this, and maybe from my perspective call for a proper investigation into this issue. What was your read generally of that entire disaster and the state in that part of the world of Lebanon?
Well, look, my understanding and from what I've been able to glean is that Lebanon faces some of the same issues that we do in terms of a very complacent political class. It's chosen in many ways to just sort of accept its problems. You cede a certain degree of territory and whatever to these sort of quasi-state, non-state actors that are operating there, and you just sort of do the best you can, but shrug things off. But the theory going around that it was there was chemicals that had been left in a warehouse for years and years until they just kind of went up. That, I think, is a metaphor for for political complacency. That you just that there's this thing bubbling. You don't actually have it's a very inertia that causes it to blow up.
That's right. Which is it's a disaster insofar as there's been a citizenry in that part of the world, and I've got liberals in that part of the world, guys who who are working on the ground to try and change that society, who have been saying this for a very long time. It's almost, if I can use South Africa as a good example, it's almost saying they have an ANC in government, but that the Umkhonto we Sizwe, that's the, at least in this case, their version is Hezbollah, is very active. And that's where the source of the inability to bring change in that part of the world. And as we speak, Terence, right now, there are massive protests of a groundswell of people who are saying, you know what, enough is enough. It's this complacency has almost led us to a situation where, hundreds of our fellow citizens in the city of Beirut, in addition to the others, of course, have now died. Maybe your final word on this as we move to Zimbabwe?
It's a tragedy, and I think look back to what Beirut was in the 60s and 70s. In fact, Osama bin Laden in his Playboy days apparently used to go there to get up to all sorts of hijinks. It was a kind of melting pot, a great place to visit. You see what toxic politics can produce. I remember, by the 1980s, people used to refer to, Lebanon was just a byword for absolute chaos and a sort of re-primitivized society. I don't take anything for granted.
Absolutely, absolutely. Speaking about not taking things for granted, Terence, I must segue to what's happening to our neighbors in the north in Zimbabwe. Right. Oh my goodness, have they not been the warnings bell, if I can call them that, unfortunately, of what can happen for those of us in the southern African region when you really are complacent and you allow liberation politics, in inverted commas, to run amok, especially with its ideological underpinnings. Let me be precise and specific. Zimbabwe, descending once again into turmoil as the people of that country take to the streets in protest of just the dire state of things in that part of the world, almost bursting the bubble that was sold to us of there being a New Dawn-esque Zimbabwe, after the military coup in that part of the world. Your thoughts on the recent ructions and really the detainment of journalists and, the police state that now is Zimbabwe?
What Zimbabwe is trying to do, or the government of Zimbabwe, is to try and exit the economic crisis while retaining the political structure. The problem is that the political structure has created the economic problem. So it's not really viable. I was just asked this week by a long-standing colleague of mine what I thought about the initiative to compensate farmers whose land was seized. And I said, I think in a way it's putting a sort of bandage on or a plaster on a gunshot wound. The analogy I used was, imagine you eating at a restaurant, the chef comes out waving a meat cleaver, attacks a couple of the patrons and kicks everyone out. Then, for 10 years, you're walking past this building and, it's just, windows have been removed. You see this drunk chef running around smashing things. And then all of a sudden, he's gone and his alcoholic wife is standing outside. No, she'll compensate you for that meal 10 years ago. It's a kind of bizarre analogy, but, I don't think people are going to be rushing back. And I think that what they've said is that, I always thought Mr. Mnangagwa was an unlikely candidate as a reformer, although there have been people who've come out of that sort of background that have surprised. But I think, yes, some sort of economic rehabilitation on particular terms that keeps, once again, the patronage networks going and keeps ZANU-PF in power and keeps the military satisfied. I was told by a Zimbabwean analyst who has deep contacts in those circles. This was Grace Mugabe's biggest failing, and why she ended up, on the losing end, is that she did not follow the cardinal rule, and that is you always defer to the soldiers. And she didn't understand that, and that was why, they eventually they stepped in. But once again, Mugabe created this sort of Frankenstein. While the army served his interests, he was willing to let it run amok, and guys to grab their bits and pieces and to send it off to the Congo to defend concessions and that sort of thing. You have an economic problem which is built on a political problem, and no matter how much money they throw at the problem, it's not going to, and they don't have much money to throw at it anyway. That's not the solution. What you are seeing is the sort of natural outgrowth. So you stomp on everyone.
Terence, as I look to also bring in my guests here. Guys, send your questions through. I am seeing them. Cheryl Murray says, I agree with you, BDL. All farmers' lives are in danger regardless of race. Yes, the farmers need extra security, but many of them say they can't afford it. Yeah, that is a big problem, Cheryl. And we spoke about this on Wednesday's show with the Paratus and Jonathan Wright, that we've made self-defense in this country, especially gun ownership, prohibitively expensive for a lot of people. And that's you should watch that episode to see what can be done in that regard. Terence, I'm just going to sift through the comments to see if there's any questions I can throw your way. Aniki Kruger saying, can we maybe fix the sound? Just let me know how it sounds now. Aniki, I have made some adjustments. Lenora Rogers. Terence, I wonder if you have seen photos of farm attacks. The brutality is beyond comprehension.
No, look, I'm the last person to dismiss that as, or say that's not important, or that is, as I say, I believe that the statistics show that farming households are at an increased danger. But what I'm saying is that in order to address that problem, it means that we have to address the whole rural safety environment, which is, as I say, crime intelligence, which is resources, which is the constant problem of property theft, which I think in turn bleeds into that into the violence. No, look, I want your guests to understand unambiguously that I'm not suggesting that there is anything good in this, or any reason to ignore it.
Absolutely. I have a question there from JW Menke, so it's kind of a comment / question, but I want you to opine on this because I know you'll Menke says, SA's middle class wants their own Paul Kagame. Your thoughts on that?
It's interesting. There is a lot of polling around that. That shows that this idea of a strong, let's say, sort of morally conservative, someone who can get things done. The Kagame, the Yoweri Museveni, even the sort of Chinese or the Singaporean model, that is actually very, very popular. I think that if you look at his positioning, that's sort of where Herman Mashaba is trying to position himself. But I do send out one big caution about that. Be careful what you wish for. Paul Kagame has presided over economic growth in Rwanda of 7% per annum. That's great. But civil libertarian big mouths, dissidents in Joburg hotel rooms, their life expectancy tends to be somewhat truncated. My concern is that we feel the sense of desperation. We look towards that sort of model to bring us prosperity and security. What you could end up with is a Mnangagwa. Yeah, like I'll get rid of the bad guy. I look like the better option, and then I turn around and oops, we just we carry on. I understand the sentiment, and I think that it is. He has a strong argument to make in Rwanda, but I beg people not to ignore the other side of that equation.
Absolutely. Another question there from Hein Strobel. Hi, Hein. Welcome to it. Terence, what is your idea of South Africa having to assist Zimbabwe as is being mentioned or perhaps touted in the media? Currently, I think we cannot at this stage financially. That's Hein Strobel.
No, look. No, this once again, I chuckle because this is a conversation I've been having for the last 15 years. The effective electricity subsidies that we were giving, the food aid, agricultural inputs and things that were being sent across, all treat the kindest thing I can say is they treated this like it was an economic problem. But this was not some sort of act of God. This was a politically imposed disaster. So I don't think that it really makes any difference until you actually start to change the politics. On the direct question, no, we just don't have the money at the moment to make a hugely meaningful difference. Nor do I think is the sentiment in South Africa particularly well disposed towards that. I would say though that a Zimbabwe that was seriously trying to get back on its feet politically, in a sense, we couldn't allow that not to. And I don't know how you square that circle.
Absolutely. In the last 2 minutes, I'm going to take my last two questions, guys.
Sure.
Lorenza A, the farm attack, she says, sounds like someone is trying to clear land for when EWC gets passed. I'm not pointing fingers, but those talking about EWC, the comments moved up. Those talking about EWC and not condemning farm murders seem suspect to me. That's Lorenzo A. It's more of a comment. I'll let you chip in, but let me take one or two more. Iana says, what will happen once all the money is gone and SASSA have to be paid out? The SNDF, the police, and the health services, etc. I maybe misread that. What will happen basically when the money's gone? When consider things like SASSA, the army, the police, and health services. Just your view on that, maybe as we close.
Well, look, when the money is gone, we are probably staring at a kind of Zimbabwean style abyss. We would end up in an intractable debt trap. I mean, this is the kind of 1980s IMF structural adjustment that the left of the ANC has always been terrified of. But we would be in a position where there is really nothing else you can do. And the problem is that the state payroll has expanded to a point at the cost of necessary investment, and the legislative agenda has got out of control. Cutting private enterprise off at its knees. That this is no longer just the stuff of a dystopian fantasy. We could well sort of end up in a position that to some extent or other resembles that.
Absolutely, Terence. I'm sorry, but we've run out of time. Of course, you are someone who I'm going to have on the show again. Let me say
always a pleasure.
Thank you very much indeed, Terence. Terence, maybe as a final word, how do people reach you on social media? I know you aren't necessarily one of those reach me on social media, but any social media you want people to know about?
No, look, I've kept off Twitter. However, as I say, the Daily Friend. I do regular columns there, and also look at the IRR's social media feed, because all of my stuff that is published elsewhere is reflected there, and it'll take you wherever you need to go.
Absolutely. That is Terence Corrigan, a writer, analyst, and really the project manager at the Institute of Race Relations. Thank you very much, Terence, and thank you, dear viewer, for being a part of the show. I know that flew by really quickly. I hope I got to as many comments and questions as I possibly have done on the show. And I really thank you so much, guys, for being a part of the show. Maybe let me just go through a few of the last sort of ones, the stragglers who I may have missed. Peter Mathay says, get rid of all the politicians and then mostly all corrupt. They are all mostly corrupt. We no longer require their services. Peter, the funny thing is, hey man, hashtag politicians are trash, as I often say on social media. COVID-68, rotten politicians, lawlessness, non-responsiveness, and the corruption of police, the creation of chaos. So many avenues of failure, a lack of integrity, discipline, and really a lack of desire to truly fix the mess. Absolutely. DJ Marcy D, Terence, there's no race in good and evil. Once people can see a better world, but evil will lie to us to make in race. Okay. DJ Massey, you missed me on that, but I think I get your sentiment. There absolutely is no race when we talk about good and evil, which is why the battle of ideas is critically important. get out of your little racial hooky. Get out of your little hooky of saying, oh, but I'm white and this is happening to us. Or, oh, and I'm black. Or, oh, and I'm colored or I'm Indian. And this is, get out of that little racial hooky and actually begin to reach out to fellow South Africans and say, hey, what are the values that bind us? Big Daddy Liberty talks a lot about faith, flag, family, and freedom. Can we agree on those 4 things? All right, let's take the next step forward. What sort of society do we want? Do we want a liberty-leaning society, a prosperous one, a non-racial, free and prosperous one? Absolutely. Then those are the ideas that help build this nation, that help build this economy. If you want to talk about all other things like race and this is what Jan van Riebeck did and this is what Shaga did here and blah, 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 then I have no interest and no business trying to mingle with you. What I want are fellow South Africans who I can take by the hand and say, yeah, this is where we're going to build that liberty-leaning, that free society, one that we can actually pass on to our children and know that it is secure, it is safe. We've built this nation, we've built this economy. So I thought, let me end off on that note. And thank you so much for watching the show, guys. We've reached the end of the show. Remember, you can get in touch with the show by emailing me at bdl@bigdaddylibertyshow.com. That's bdl@bigdaddylibertyshow.com. Just a word of advice, not advice, what am I trying to say here? I can't find the words, but look out for next weekend's Late Nights with Big Daddy Liberty show. You might actually be able to call in to the show. We're working on that. So you guys can literally be a part of the show. You can call in live on the show. So look out for that next week. I really look forward to hearing from you guys in addition to reading your comments. So look out for that next week. Guys, with that being said, thank you so much for watching. And remember, as I always say at the end of a show, never trust a commie.